Hey, it's Jacob, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about what I'd do if I wanted to become a self-taught programmer in 2022, starting from zero. Specifically, I'll talk about the number one mistake beginners make. I'll give you my own step-by-step action plan to create a software. And I'll show you how you can duplicate the Tesla FSD framework to help you get started. But let's start with the problem that you might have right now, which is maybe you can't write code. You don't know how. Programming is probably not part of your job, and you'd like to start, but you don't know where to get started. And when you look for information, you might feel like there is just too much of it, and you don't know what resource to choose. You might have heard people say that it's easy to write code, especially for simple languages like Python. But the problem is it doesn't seem easy at all, and maybe you tried in the past, but thought that it was too much of a hassle to keep going, and so you stopped and gave up. You might feel like you had a bad experience, and at the end of it, you were even more demotivated. And so saying that writing code is easy might make you feel even worse right now. And some people might tell you that the reason why you don't find it easy is because you don't practice enough, and you should practice more. And the problem with that is when you start, usually you don't know what to do. So it might be great advice, but it doesn't really help. It's almost like it's too vague to be actually helpful, and it might even make you feel dumb for not knowing what to start with. That's why I want to give you a clear step-by-step action plan that you can actually apply in your life. So let's get started. Step number 1, start with something useful. So don't worry, I'm going to explain and give you examples, but first, understand that this is the number one beginner's mistake, because if you are doing something that turns out not to be useful to anyone, including yourself, then it's the most demotivating thing ever. Whether the project works or doesn't is irrelevant at this point because it's not useful to anyone. So now, what is something useful exactly? There are tons of ways to define what something useful is, but if you are just getting started, here is a very simple way to identify what something useful is. You can ask yourself, does it feel like a waste of time? Now, every word in this question is important. Let me repeat, does it feel like a waste of time? I'm not asking, is it a waste of time? I'm asking, does it feel like it? So it might be like an actual waste of time. So if it's time consuming, then the added value is obvious. But if it feels like it might be either tedious to do or very repetitive grunt work. So in both cases, it's useful. Most people concentrate on eliminating a number of working hours, which is definitely valuable. But tedious work is equally or sometimes even more valuable. So a few examples, if you need to fill out PDF forms or if you need to write an Excel report, then those two things are either time-consuming or repetitive grunt work. So these things specifically probably feel like a waste of time when you're doing them. So again, what feels like a waste of time for someone doesn't necessarily feel like a waste of time for someone else. So that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say. So if it feels like a waste of time for you, then that's a great project to get started. So the question is, now that you know what to work on, how do you get started? Let's say you want to create a software that's going to fill out PDF forms. If you have never created a software before, you probably don't know where to get started. And that's the second step. You deconstruct the task into single steps. So you'll hear a lot of words that describe the exact same thing. It's a system, a process, a step-by-step action plan, a checklist, whatever you want to call it. The point is you need to know what sequence of steps will get you to the end result. The point is to separate the what to do and the how to do that thing. If a task requires 15 steps to get to the end result, then you'll have to remember all those steps in the right order while programming, which is probably not going to work. You're going to make mistakes. And so by not having a written down process, you're making it 10 times more difficult. Once you have a written down process, you need to make sure it works, and there are two ways to go about it. The first way is write everything down and try it a few times to make sure it works. And the second way is write it down based on what you're doing while doing the task. And you can do both, but the point is that you need to have an accurate description of what you're actually doing in the real world, not some theoretical idea that you have in your mind. Now, those two steps don't require to write a single line of code. And now you can get started with step 3, which is starting with one single step of your process. And that's how you can get started with something useful right away without getting overwhelmed. And the reason why I recommend doing it that way is because you know that you can get there by doing it that way. Since every step is written down, and if you know that you can implement every single step, then you know it's doable. It might seem obvious, but that's not how everyone does it. If you take the example of self-driving cars, and I'm simplifying here, but there are companies that try to get the raw data from the sensors of the car, the cameras, the lidars, the radars, and train an AI or a neural net to control the steering wheel. It's kind of a high risk, high reward approach, and we don't know yet if it can be done. So that is an example of having one task, driving a car, and not breaking it down into single steps. Another approach, which is what Tesla is doing, is to train an AI to do the image processing, and then to use heuristic algorithms to use the processed images and plan the trajectory. And then we can use the trajectory to compute the steering wheel angle and the speed of the car. And so for this approach, we know it can be done. It's just a matter of time, because we know that every step can be done well. There is no best approach, but if you're a beginner, I suggest doing it step by step, and I will give you more reasons why. It's better for both motivation and reliability. If you do it step by step, you'll get a sense of accomplishment at every step of the way. It's not going to be a binary thing where after working for hours and hours and sometimes days and weeks, you either make it or you don't, and if you don't, you get demotivated and you quit. For the reliability aspect of it, if you do it step by step, you can iterate on every step before starting the next one. This means that every single step will be done well. And the last thing is the ease of use. You can stop at any time and use it as is, and it's still gonna be useful, which again wouldn't be the case if you were to do it at once and everything works or nothing works. You'll also be able to debug it more easily because you'll know at which step the software didn't work. And also, if there is a bug in one step, you can do that step manually and use the code to do the rest of the task. You can stop the bleeding for that single step and keep moving forward. So here you have it. This is my 3-step action plan that I would do if I wanted to become a self-taught programmer in 2022. If you do want to become a self-taught programmer, I created a free online course to help you get there faster. You can click on the link in the description to get it. Have a great day and see you in the next video.